I have a prepared statement. I'm sure I'd like to stand up here and talk, but I'll stick to the script. As we all know, the senseless violence in our city continued last night. Tragically, a 12-year-old boy lost his life to gunfire. We have a 16-year-old in the hospital suffering for what are going to be life-altering injuries. As we previously reported after last night, about 8 p.m., officers responded to the area of Atkinson Street and Reynolds Street for the report of shots fired. On their arrival, they located a 12-year-old boy already deceased from a gunshot wound in the street. A short time later, officers located a 16-year-old in the backyard of a house on Prospect Street, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. The first responding officers and bystanders immediately began life-saving aid, including the application of a tourniquet. The 16-year-old was transported to Strong Hospital in critical condition where, thankfully, due to the incredible medical staff, they were able to stabilize him and he is expected to survive. While our Major Crimes Unit continues to do their part to seek the perpetrator of this horrific act of violence, so should our community. We know that there are people out there who know who did this last night. We know there are people out there who have information about what happened. All too often, members of our community simply look the other way and accept the violence around them. No more. This has to stop. Just under 2 months ago, retired Officer Keith Booker was senselessly murdered just 2 blocks away on Jefferson Avenue. We've distributed numerous pictures to the public, and yet his killer remains free. The police department cannot do this by ourselves. We cannot arrest our way out of this. Everyone needs to do their part to fix this plague of violence across our city. The RPD, the hardworking men and women of the Rochester Police Department, have taken over 700 firearms off the streets so far this year, arrested more than 550 people for illegal guns. More than 60 of those have been referred for federal prosecution, all with more than 60 vacant positions in this department. Just this week, we announced our new initiative, our public safety partnership with the Department of Justice, which will bring an unprecedented level of cooperation between the Rochester Police Department and our federal partners. But again, we cannot do it alone. Our community needs to step up and help us hold those who perpetuate this violence accountable. If you have any information regarding last night's murder or any other senseless acts of violence, you need to do your part. Call Crime Stoppers, 911, 311. Our entire community needs to come together to stop this violence. I'm going to hand it over to the mayor, and then I will come back for a few questions.
A 12-year-old child was murdered last night. I have a child that age. Kids that age should be at home playing Roblox. Should be at home playing Xbox. They should be preparing for Thanksgiving. But unfortunately, I want people to understand that this child will not be sitting at that table on Thursday. Sadly, this is becoming all too regular, not only in our country, but particularly in our community, where earlier this year, the first homicide of the year was a 14-year-old child. And I thought that we couldn't get any lower than that. I thought that people would wake up when a 10-year-old child was shot braiding her grandmother's hair, or when the 3-year-old was shot simply sitting in its car seat while a group of folks who had no regard for human life shot at each other. Thankfully, those individuals will be adjudicated in a court of law. What we are seeing is not normal, it's not natural, and we must not normalize it. I can put millions of dollars into the Rochester Peace Collective. I can pay for police overtime. I can have the U.S. Marshals here. We can work with the Department of Justice. We can add pathways to peace workers. But there's a missing element here. And the missing element here is someone knows who did this to this 12-year-old child. I don't have enough police officers to put on every corner and every nook and cranny in Rochester. I just don't. We don't have those resources. And even if we did, that would not stop any person deciding to pick up a gun and shoot someone. Period. I will say to the families that are out here, please know what your children are doing. Now, obviously, this is an ongoing investigation, and obviously we can't get into any details. The chief's not going to be able to answer who did it and any of those types of things. But I do know this. The streets talk. The streets watch. And someone knows why this 12 and 16-year-old were out late last night, late in the evening, around 7 o'clock, near Reynolds Street, and what happened there. And they need to come forward. We know that the proliferation of illegal guns in our community continues to be a major problem, despite the hundreds of guns that we've taken off the streets. The questions that this community needs to ask, and people who may have information on this case, is what if it was your child? What if it was your baby? And I want to put into perspective 12 years old. Think about it, 12 years old. And I looked at this young man. Birthday on Christmas. We won't be celebrating Christmas with his family this year. So to start the holiday season, we're dealing with this. And I will also add, last week we talked about the trauma that many of our children are facing. And yet again, we have a child that was not only traumatized, but experienced the violence that we are trying to stop. He experienced the violence that we are trying to stop. These tragedies have real-life consequences for our city. They have real-life consequences for his classmates, for his family, and for the cycle of violence that continues to happen. And obviously we can't go into all the details here, but I will say this, that most of this violence that we're seeing is not by accident or happenstance. It is based upon situations that people are making and putting themselves into. Someone deciding to pick up a gun, or someone engaging in activity that they should not be engaged in. We must get a hold of our young people. It takes the families to get involved. It takes the larger community to get involved. This is not something that we are going to police our way out of. This is not something that City Hall will solve by itself. All of the emergency orders in the world will not stop some of the nonsense that we are having in our community. It just won't. And that's the God's honest truth. And there is not one solution to all of this, it's multiple. And part of that solution is the broader community speaking up when they see something. And I can tell you, last night at 7 o'clock, although it was dark, someone saw something. Someone heard something. Someone knows something. And if we think that this is just the natural order of things, God help us as a society. Because a 12-year-old kid being picked up off the street and put into a body bag for his family to get ready to have a funeral after being shot, when earlier this year, when a 15-year-old was shot and killed, 17-year-old shot and killed, 10-year-old shot, 3-year-old shot, these are not normal instances. And I'm not saying that older people deserve to get shot, but when children are getting shot on a regular basis, that is not natural and that is not normal. Now we're here giving you a press conference, but I can tell you all the press conferences in the world is not gonna stop this. All the marches of folks wanting to mug for the camera and talk about how bad it is, that's not good enough. We don't need any more talk. We need action. We identified what the problems are. We know that we have an illegal gun problem in this community, and we know that we have many young people who are involved in things that they should not be involved in. You can go to the Children's Detention Center. It is filled with young people who have committed murders over this past year who are awaiting trial, who are under the age of 18. Those are larger issues that City Hall and the police department just cannot solve alone. So anybody that gets up and tells you, oh, we got a solution for it, they don't. And anyone that gets up and has press conferences and want to march, I don't want to see any press conferences or marches. I want people to tell me who killed this kid, who was there, what did the car look like, who were they hanging with, where were they going, what were they buying, who was the beef with. All these are things that people in this community know answers to. I don't know the answer to it. Chief doesn't know the answer to it, but someone out there knows the answer to it. Just like someone knew who killed Julius Greer in cold blood buying noodles and didn't want to come forward, even though we have a reward for that. Or Keith Booker, who was in a motor vehicle accident and somebody decided to shoot him. We need someone to speak up. I'm begging someone to speak up. It's this young man today. I don't think we released his name yet.
No.
It's this young man today. It could be your child tomorrow. Rochester must speak up. You've seen the public safety briefings. You hear us talk about prevention, intervention, and suppression. You've seen the investments. But I cannot force someone to talk. That is what we must rely on the community. So if you were around Reynolds Street last night around 6:45, 7 o'clock, you saw something. Call 911. Call Crime Stoppers. But the easiest number to dial is 911. Call the mayor's office, 428-7538. Call me directly. Say, Mayor, I got some information. I won't use your name. People have been doing that a lot, and I want to thank people who do that. People have called me about drug houses. We've shut them down. People have called me about stuff that they have seen in other homicide cases. I passed on that information, didn't use their name. You can call me directly. Call the mayor's office if you don't want to call 911. This is shameful, pitiful, and embarrassing on all of us as a society when we are having young children die and they're not going to war, but they're babies. 12-year-old kid. It has to stop. If it doesn't stop, God help us, because who will speak for the children? How are they going to grow up and speak for themselves if they're dead and buried alive before they even reach the age of 18? We got to do better, and people have to speak up. And today would be the day to do it.
Obviously, we haven't released the names yet. It's early on in the investigation. There's very little I can actually release, but I will attempt to answer a few questions.
Any information you can give on motive or connection at all?
No, not right now.
Can you just set the scene for us? You believe this was a drive-by, people were in the car shooting at them, or there was some sort of interaction on the sidewalk? What do you believe led up to this?
So I know the mayor mentioned, he'd like to know a description of the car involved. We can't actually say at this point if there was a car involved or if it was on foot. At this point, it's too early. We just don't know. Can't say.
If this was the summertime, 7 p.m., the sun would be up. What are parents to do in these types of situations? Not let their kids go outside, or what's the answer?
Well, and again, I don't want to, it's very early in this investigation. I don't want to throw shade on the relatives of these young men, but, many times in general, I have stood here and said, parents, know what your children are doing. Know who their friends are. Look at their social media. Know where they're going, who they're hanging out with. I mean, no parent is perfect. I got 5 of them myself. We have our trials and tribulations, but being actively involved in your children's life goes a long, long, long way. It's human nature, even adults. If we know someone is watching, we stay between the lines a lot more. And if someone shows they care.
Mayor, you're asking people to step up. People are scared. They're seeing what's going on in the community. You know this. And they don't want to get themselves in the middle of something. So how do you assure them their own safety if they do bring you information that you need?
Exactly what I just said. Anonymous information. They don't have to use their name. You can step up anonymously. Crime Stoppers is anonymous. Of course people are scared. We live in these neighborhoods. And I know the deal. I had someone killed outside my house when I was a kid. So I'm familiar with this. This isn't some esoteric conversation. This is real life. So of course people are scared. But as I said, we need them to do it anonymously. And in terms of what we want to tell parents, wrap your arms around your children. Know where they are, know who they're talking to. Obviously, this is part of an investigation, so we can't get into any of the details. But we want to make sure that parents know that we will do whatever we can to help keep their children safe. If they think that their kid is involved in something, we have a program for that. We are program rich in this community. So I don't want parents to think that their kids playing outside, that it's dangerous for their kids to play outside. Their kids should be able to play outside. They should be able to be kids. But as your kids age, you need to know what they're involved in, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, you're smart reporters. You can read between the lines. We can't talk about this particular case in general. But I will tell you that a lot of the violence that we see in this community is not just me seeing you and wanting to shoot you. You know what I mean? So this is not we're not talking about something that's pie in the sky. Those of us that have grown up in the neighborhoods, we know what it's about. The key is, how do we stop the cycle of this violence? So if someone saw something and they're afraid, you can call 911, you can call 428-7538, you can call 311, you can call 211, I don't care who you call.
Call the chief's office.
You can call the chief's office, and guess what? You don't have to say your name. I saw a car, I saw someone walking. I have a Ring camera. I recorded it on my phone. You can do it anonymously. People do it all the time. And you in the media are aware of that. You get anonymous tips all the time on stuff, and you don't want to reveal your sources, right? We can do the same thing here. Next question.
Well, I was going to ask, Chief, you initially said you were going to stick to your script, but you might have had some other thoughts. Is there anything else you want to share, what you really want to say?
No, obviously, this is emotionally upsetting for all of us. So, you know.
Possible to hear from the command staff standing here today, just their perspective on arriving to the scene, dealing with all of this, point of view?
Well, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. I spent a lot of time in Genesee section where this occurred. Dealt with a lot of things, and I can tell you that, you know, in my mind's eye, as being those first officers that got there and seeing this will never, ever, ever leave them. Nor the first officers that gave, you know, that put the tourniquet on the 16-year-old. These are things that follow you your whole rest of your career, your whole lifetime. It's all part of the baggage that we carry. But, you know, it's not about us. We're happy to be here. We're happy to serve. These folks stepped up. They did their job. We will help them through whatever issues they're going to have, and we'll be strong, and we're going to continue to serve the Rochester community.
Chief, were any guns recovered at the scene? Did either of the victims have guns?
Again, too early in the investigation, not going to comment on it. So this is going to be the last one. Go ahead.
How many tips have you received from last night to right now? Are you getting a lot, or is it, you know, not as much as you were standing here, but how many have you gotten, I guess?
Certainly not enough. Nowhere near enough. So again, please, before this perpetrator harms someone else and another family has to put a black wreath on their door for the holidays, we need folks to step up. Thank you.